You think you'll get one more chance, don't you? We'll be back. Because why not, right? Never mind that Carnell Lake would miss the entire season with a surgery on his foot, and Leon Searcy would be out until November with a torn tendon. Things will be fine. Burnell, Smith, Taylor, they're all still here, and they would do their usual work against Cleveland in Week 1. The dynamic duo would lead the Jags to a 23-7 lead over the Ravens at halftime, as Smith would continue his dominance with 291 yards and 3 touchdowns on the day. Should be fine. Even as Baltimore would slowly crawl their way back, and now it's a one-score game, but it's okay. Smith would once again prevail and give the Jags a 4-point cushion with under 2 minutes left. And they've only got 2 timeouts left. One of the best defensive units from '99 should have no trouble here. And the Ravens marched down the field and won with ease. Even despite recording their first shutout, it just wasn't the same. That AFC Championship just left them broken. I guess if there's one thing to learn, it's that you never take what you have for granted, because it can so easily be lost. Hindered by injuries, the Jags tumbled all the way down the standings and crashed at 3-7, back in the basement. Sure, they tried to claw their way back, like they always had, rattling off 4 straight to get back to 500. Taylor led the way with a 234-yard game against the Steelers, a day after getting lit up in Orlando for a party. The result was a hungover performance, still admirable, but he had to leave with about 10 minutes left due to cramps. While he wasn't able to break his idol Walter Payton's mark of 275 yards in a single game, he does still have the most rushing yards in a single game in franchise history. But his efforts were in vain. The dream was over. The Jaguars missed the playoffs for the first time since their birth year, and now, all of a sudden, the future seemed very shrouded in doubt. A thought even more true as they found themselves over $30 million over the salary cap by year's end. The window was closing, and they had to act fast. Desperate moves to restructure contracts for Burnell, Lake, Searcy, and others left the Jags with one last chance to make a run. The mentality with the Jags was, we got to strike while the iron is hot. Nobody's getting any younger. We had all the necessary components to win a Super Bowl, but the window wasn't going to stay open very long. Michael Hugh, the senior vice president, would share the sentiment, the hope that so desperately didn't want to be seen as false. We took the view that we could sprinkle out the players' contracts intermittently. Tom would want to keep these players, and I'd find a way to keep it intact. Yet it just wasn't meant to be. Searcy, after signing a 5-year, $50 million contract, would be released just days later. A mutual decision so the Jags could avoid cap trouble. He would be marred with more turmoil in his legs, and never play a down of football again after the '99 championship. Yet more was demanded, and it came in the form of their beloved stars, Boselli and Taylor, who would both miss nearly the entire 2001 season with injury. From there, the wheels fell off, and the Jags crumbled once more. They couldn't even find solace when they won, as a victory against Cleveland came at the cost of a botched call by the refs, overturning a catch on 4th down into an incompletion and sealing the game in the process, even after the Browns had already run a play to spike the ball. And then, all hell broke loose.
And these officials really need to get off the field.
And you know what? The fans got to stop throwing crap. We just saw a guy get hit in the head and he's down, split his head wide open. The fans have got to control themselves. People are getting hurt. It's ridiculous. You're only hurting yourselves by throwing stuff on the field.
And the officials are pummeled as they head into the locker room, and Butch Davis is speechless. He doesn't know what to say or what to do.
Not that it mattered. Not that any of it mattered anymore. It's over. You hear me? It's over. The dream had been taken out and shot and buried and spit on. It is over. The only thing left to do is wade through the mud until we can find a way to start again. As if things couldn't get any worse, the Houston Texans were coming in the expansion draft, and Jacksonville still needed to clear $23 million in space. There was nothing that could be done. On one somber night in early February 2002, Tom Coughlin put his head in his hands and walked down the streets to the Marsh Landing neighborhood to confront Tony Boselli with the news. His time in Jacksonville was over. The very first man to ever put on the teal and gold, the first pick from the Jags in the '95 expansion draft, was taken from them in the very same way he arrived. I'm looking at Boselli standing with Texans owner Bob McNair. That didn't sit well with me. In the years that would come, Boselli would miss the entire season with arm troubles and would never play a snap for the Texans, instead choosing to retire. He would remain in the area, living with his family and being honored by the organization and the league with his incredible play. In 2006, to settle matters for good, he would sign a one-day contract and officially retire with the Jags, who would go on to eventually retire his number, the first and only in franchise history. To cement his legacy, he would be inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame in 2022, the only Jaguar among the legions of greats. A hero, an icon, an idol in Jacksonville, always and forever.
So the thing about Tony Boselli is he kind of just goes down as like a legend of the team in sort of the same way Evan Longoria is looked as a legend of the Rays, I think. A little bit before my time, so I can't really say too much about his style of play. I've definitely seen highlights, I've definitely seen, clips and interviews of him, but he does seem like a great guy. He genuinely loves the team. I will say for a couple years in the 2020s, he was kind of, on local Jacksonville like radio and media talking about the team and Shad's decision making, and particularly Trent Baalke. He never wanted to like outright say so and so was a bad decision or keeping so and so was bad. He would never like talk negatively about the Jaguars, but you could tell he still had like a bunch of passion and joy for the team. Like he is a Jacksonville Jaguar through and through, and I'm really glad he's the EVP now.
Do you think he is the best Jaguars player ever, or not? If not, then who do you think is?
It has to come down to, if it's not him, it's gotta be, Mark Brunell. I don't think there's one true best player of all time for the Jags. Boselli is definitely up there. Brunell's definitely up there. Jimmy Smith and Kane McCardell also rank pretty highly, as well as Maurice Jones-Drew and Fred Taylor. But I don't think there's one GOAT of Jaguars. I think there's a GOAT by committee. We haven't had one that has stood out amongst the rest.
Along with him, 4 other players would depart, including Keenan McCardell, who after being unable to re-sign him, the Bucs would gladly scoop him up, promptly extend him, and he would turn right around and catch 2 touchdowns to win the franchise's first Super Bowl. As for the Jags, well, they didn't really stand much of a chance. The only reason they didn't completely bottom out is Coughlin himself. who practically willed this sad sack of a team above the doldrums. But not even he was safe, as he was let go of at season's end, concluding the tenure of one of the most feared but influential men in Jacksonville history. He would be replaced by one Jack Del Rio, the man who helped craft the Ravens' dominant defense that led them to a Super Bowl. He always held the same motto, "Keep chopping wood," which I guess is one way to rally the team together. To help prove his point, a big old stump was placed in the locker room, with an axe planted in its side. Every now and then, players would come and hack away at it, splintering it to pieces and spraying wood chips across the carpet. One man, punter Chris Hansen, decided to give it a go, as he took hold of the axe and brought it down, ripping a large gash in his leg in the process, which required surgery to patch up, and leaving him sidelined for several weeks. Yeah, maybe having an actual weapon in the locker room is not the best idea. So the 2003 Jags chopped away, with Fred Taylor leading the charge, dominating in the latter half of the year with 989 yards in his last 8 games, including a 163-yard performance against Houston and a monster 194-yard game against New Orleans. If there was any doubt that he was beginning to slow down, it was thoroughly erased, as he set himself on an upper echelon. 1,572 yards, far and away the best year in his career, even if it ultimately amounted to very little, as the rest of the team struggled without him. Even at quarterback, the turmoil continued, as Burnell found himself sidelined by his soon-to-be replacement, future Bucs legend Byron Leftwich. Fresh off being drafted in the first round, Burnell was left to stick around and help coach the man that would succeed him. I wasn't doing backflips on draft day, I'll tell you that, as he was understandably pissed with Weaver for shortchanging him. The team had offered an extension, though without a signing bonus, Burnell refused it, and the team flat out told him, "This will be your last year with the team, then," and drafted his replacement. Begrudgingly, he stayed and helped coach Leftwich into his new role, who unsurprisingly struggled in his first year. But this was more than that. This was a man who thought he was going to remain in Jacksonville for his entire career, now seeing the team betray him in front of his very eyes. On December 14th, 2003, the 4-10 Jaguars walked into familiar territory, remembering old tales of glory. 7 years ago, they were in the AFC Championship, eyes wide with dreams of Super Bowl glory. Sure, they lost that day to the Patriots, but the hope still remained that they would be back. This missed opportunity wouldn't burden them for long. But now, here he was, on the bench back in Foxborough for the first time since that day, his time in Jacksonville all but over, and nothing to show for it. When I think of that game, I think of that play. Burnell would often reflect on that last-minute interception. I just didn't see him. Of course, the Jags would lose today, an ugly contest in the bitter cold, capping off an 0-for-8 run in road games. The team would fall to the precipice of tumbling below 500, but managed to swing things back around with 3 wins in their last 5 games. Ultimately, Burnell's time with the Jaguars would come to an end, as he would be traded to Washington. Despite everything, he still played on, for no other reason than to keep going. One thing Jack has said is that the game goes on. You give it all you have. Some guys are fortunate to get a Super Bowl ring. That's why I want to still play this game. And, well, 7 years later, he would finally make it, as a backup quarterback for the Saints, winning his first ring. Good for him, and thanks for all the memories. Speaking of the Saints, they walked into Jacksonville the very next week and proceeded to pull off incredible bullshit, because of course the Jags can't catch a break. This garbage team can't even earn the luxury of an easy win. No, they just can't put it away. They have to commit the most dreadful of sins and allow this nightmare to unfold. Aaron Brooks drops back from his own 25 with seconds left, finds Stallworth at midfield, who somehow breaks past two defenders, the useless pylons that they are. He breaks another tackle and runs past the 35, where he laterals it to Michael Lewis, who gets another 5 yards before tossing it back to Deuce McAllister, who gets a bit further before being caught in the crowd. But just as he's falling, he gets the ball away to Jerome Pathan, who's got nothing but daylight in front of him. The only 3 lateral touchdown in NFL history. And of course it comes against the Jags, because why the hell not? Now all John Carney needs to do is kick the extra point and
he missed it! Can you believe that finish?
Huh. Well, maybe the devil magic still lives in Duval. Surely the Saints are handling it well.
For the Saints to stay alive, pending the extra point by John Carney. And he missed. No! He missed the extra point wide right! Oh my God! How could he do that? No! No!
And yet, there was some hope to be had heading into 2004, as Leftwich looked a bit better down the stretch, and Taylor was still playing just as good as his golden days, along with Smith. Sure, they would lose Tony Brackens to free agency, and the dreams of playing the Super Bowl in their own stadium were far, far away. But maybe these guys have a bit more to them than just mediocrity. Their defense was still among the better half of the league, a point they flexed as they jumped out to a 3-0 start, including beating those goddamn Titans. Every game won was only by 3 points or fewer, injecting a twinge of optimism back into the Duval faithful. By the time they reached the bye week, they sat at 5-3 and were thick in the playoff hunt. Led by Marcus Stroud and John Henderson on defense, they looked poised to return to the postseason. But of course, it would be those goddamn Titans that would derail things, pulling out a close win to start a 3-game losing streak that sent Jacksonville back to 500. They would still manage to win the next 2, including at Lambeau Field, though it came at the cost of Taylor's season. But they still had a chance, or at least they would have if they didn't lay the biggest egg of the season and be shut out by Houston, which included a 66-yard fumble return score that put the nail in the coffin. Still, a 9-7 finish was plenty of reason to be optimistic, as the team would keep chopping away in 2005. With Leftwich in his 3rd year, he would propel the team to 4-3. Not exactly thrilling, but good enough, I suppose. 2 gutsy overtime wins against the Jets and Steelers made the difference. As usual, injuries bit them down the stretch, with Leftwich, Mike Peterson, and others all missing some time. But they were able to power through, winning 8 of their last 9 to climb up to 12-4. Now, that didn't mean they were a powerhouse, as all but one of those games were against losing teams. A 4th quarter comeback at the buzzer pulling them over the 1-7 Texans, a back-and-forth game against the Titans, and an ugly contest against the Niners, barely edging out a win against a 2-12 squad at home. The one team that posed a challenge, the undefeated Colts, absolutely ran the table with them, getting out to 26-3 in the fourth. Sure, the Jags would try to mount a valiant comeback, but it was too little too late, and the doubts were sown that this team couldn't compete with the rest of the big boys. Well, they'd find out for themselves as the Jaguars headed back to that dreaded place in New England to face the Patriots in the postseason once again. Sure, they were a new team playing in a new stadium, with the old one now being a parking lot, against a Patriots squad that themselves looked very different. They'd just gone back-to-back, led by an upstart young quarterback you might have heard of. And, well, I'm not going to beat around the bush here. This game showed what we already knew. The Jags just didn't belong. They had their chances, nearly matching New England in total yards and time of possession, with the defense knocking the ball out 4 times. Yet they just couldn't seal the deal when it mattered. New England retained possession every single time, and the offense would stall out on the cusp of a score. Once again, their Super Bowl dreams ended at the hands of the Patriots. But surely it doesn't happen again, right? Hopefully next time they'll put up a better showing. I mean, 28-3? Come on, an insurmountable deficit. You're playing that poorly in a playoff game, you might as well just give it up then. To really add salt in the wound, that game would be the end of a career for Jimmy Smith, who would retire to the sunset after a prolific outing. His 99 season is still one of incredible dominance, remaining the single best receiving season in franchise history 27 years later. In fact, he also holds the 3rd, 4th, 6th, 7th, 9th, and 10th best seasons on that leaderboard, showing his absolute dominance and unparalleled talent. His 12,287 total yards with the team is in another stratosphere compared to everyone else, with only his pal Keenan McCardell coming within half of that. When thinking of the greatest players to take the field in Duval County, Jimmy Smith deserves to be up in that conversation. That left 3 men remaining from that 99 team: Fred Taylor, Donovan Darius, and Kyle Brady, all in their 30s and well over the crest of their primes. Maybe they could go out and make some noise. Coming off a 12-4 season, there was still hope they could contend. They proved it by winning their first 2 games, and against good competition this time, shutting out the reigning champs in Pittsburgh. Against the Colts, they held their ground, keeping it close at half. Perhaps too close. But costly mistakes came to bite them, with a pair of picks and missed field goals allowing Indy to come back and seal the win. From there, they just couldn't recover, as the 2006 Jags just didn't know what they were. One week they're pulling out a gritty win against the Giants, the next they're losing to Houston again. Flip-flopping around the standings, they remained just near the bubble to have playoffs be a likelihood, but not a certainty. It would be tougher without Leftwich, who would go down against the Jets and not return, forcing David Garrard in his stead, who did about as well as he could given what he had. With 4 games left, the Jags and 4 other teams were in a dogfight for the wildcard spots, all sitting at 7-5. With not much they could do, their only option was to keep winning, though they would have to start against the same Colts that seemed to have their number, just like the Titans of old. Yet this time, the fates were different, and it was all thanks to one man. Maurice Jones-Drew, in his rookie campaign, got the privilege of learning from the best, as he and Taylor propelled the team to victory today. I was a kid who came in not really knowing much about the organization, about the NFL in general. Everyone told me Fred Taylor is the guy you want to learn from. I remember asking Fred as many questions as possible, training with him every offseason, picking his brain, understanding how the game is played, how he took care of his body. I just tried to get as much advice as possible, and he was willing to give it. He watched as Taylor ran 76 yards down the field on their first play from scrimmage, and as if to match him, he would punch up through the gut for a 48-yard score. But the highlight of the day came to start the second half, as Maurice would field the kickoff at the 7 and take it all the way back to the house for 7. In the end, he would defeat his mentor 166 to 131 in rushing yards, as the Jags took down the Colts in dominant fashion. Those 375 total rushing yards still remains a franchise record in a single game, and it was in large part thanks to the two-headed monster leading the ground game. Hopes were high, as if they could secure just one more win in their final 3 games, they would make the playoffs. Yet, they got off on the wrong foot against Tennessee, giving up an 83-yard pick-6 just when things were starting to heat up. Sure, they were able to turn it back around and lead at the half, but the offense just couldn't hold on to the ball, giving up a 92-yard fumble return and another pick-6, this time for 61. In a game where the Titans' offense were held to just 57 yards and a single field goal, all the damn offense had to do was not shoot themselves in the foot. And yet they did so at the worst possible time. But hope still remained, as it was now a 4-way tie for the wildcard spots. If they can just win out, they'll make it in. Now, who are they playing in Week 16? Oh, you've gotta be kidding me. Of course, it would be Brady once again to kill any hopes the Jags had of postseason glory, as despite Jones-Drew's best efforts, they would fall again, and to seal the deal, they would completely crumble against the Chiefs, ending the season at 8-8 and on the couch once again. Times were interesting, to say the least, in Jacksonville, a team that was okay but not great. Attendance only continuing to decline, and a roster full of aging veterans and misdemeanors. Yeah, living up to the Florida reputation, 7 players would be arrested in 2006 and 7, ranging from speeding to carrying a concealed firearm to drunken reckless driving to assault in a Denny's. How lovely. And that's not even getting into what tackle Khalif Barnes had to say about the ordeal, after he was pulled over for going 160. It's all racist. That's all what that was right there. All racist. This is unbelievable, man. Unbelievable being a pro athlete in Jacksonville. I can't wait to get out of here. Can't wait. Just incredible. As if PR couldn't get any worse, the front office would come after Donovan Darius, the 9-year safety who played his guts out for this team. On what was a normal day spent playing ping pong in the locker room, he was feeling better than ever. Today was my best ping pong day ever. I beat Rasheed Mathis, who is probably the locker room king. I was like, man, this is an amazing day. Just minutes later, he was called into Del Rio's office and given the pink slip. For reasons natural to the world of sports, an aging player with a big contract and injury history, it was a sensible move. But of course, it came at a cost, as it left the entire team in shock. I got emotional, he said. I wasn't afraid to tell them I love you all. Yet none was more hurt than Fred Taylor, now the only remaining piece from '99 after Brady would sign to be with the more well-known Brady. I thought we would retire together. I will miss his character, personality, and leadership. I told him all the time that I hope we will be teammates forever, because I don't want to have to avoid him tackling me for an opposing team. "8 years ago, they had Super Bowl dreams. Now he was the only one left to see it through." Alongside them, Leftwich would be released as Del Rio would give the starting role to Garrard, part of a 19-player purge that left the Jags with many question marks heading into 2007. With their ragtag group of guys, maybe they had it in them for one more shot. Or maybe not. Who knows, they could pull off another miracle run like in '96. They just have to keep believing.
Jones drew, first down yardage and more. Inside the 15-yard line, first down Jacksonville. Taylor to the 5, touchdown!
In a way, it was Fred Taylor who carried the spark of this team, the last vestiges of a once mighty era. On his back, he gave Duval his final show, amassing over 1,200 yards, mostly over the last stretch of the season, when the team needed him most. In his last 5 games, he put up 100 in each of them, including 4 touchdowns, torching defenses left and right just like the glory days. That run included a special day in November against Tennessee, where he plowed right through safety Chris Hope to surpass a milestone even he thought was impossible. 10,000 total yards, a mark that will forever cement his name in Jacksonville lore. With his help, the Jaguars launched to 11-5, a solid number 5 seed in a stacked AFC. But man, why can't it be us, huh? Why not us? So their run began in the frigid confines of Heinz Field, a place where the Jags had already come out victorious a few weeks prior, with a last-second touchdown by who else to seal the win. Sure enough, Taylor would make a mark again with a tying score, coming off the back of a 96-yard return by his partner Jones-Drew, getting all the way down to the 1. Together they would keep the pressure on, and a pick by Mathis would be returned for the lead. Tack on another score by Maurice, and the Jags sat up by 14 at the half. Within 10 minutes into the third, they would score again, making it an 18-point lead over the Steelers heading into the fourth. But of course, it wouldn't be that easy, as they would respond with a huge pass to make it 28-17. In a critical drive, Garrard would be sacked and Jacksonville would be forced to punt, giving the ball to a Steelers offense gaining momentum. Within a few minutes, they marched down the field and scored again, though they would crucially fail the 2-pointer, leaving it a 5-point game. But once again, the offense just wouldn't get out of its own way, giving up a pick in the red zone and setting up the Steelers deep. The defense put their hearts on the line, performing a goal line stand with 3 straight incompletions, though on 4th down they would be hit with DPI at the worst possible time. Just like that, Pittsburgh had the lead, though the defense would give them one last blessing by blocking the 2-pointer again. With 2.5 minutes left and 1 timeout, Garrard would take it himself for 32 yards up the middle, as if to mirror Brunell's magical run all those years ago. It came down to the leg of Josh Scobie, the man who would one day become the highest scoring player in Jaguars history, and he wouldn't miss tonight, nailing the 25-yarder. On the ensuing drive, Bobby McRae would force the fumble to complete the upset, just like the Jags of old. For the first time in their entire history, the Steelers were beaten at home twice by the same team in the same season. Hopes were high, and the Jags looked to ride that wave into the divisional round against... Oh, come on, man! The 2007 Patriots don't really need an introduction. 16-0 and all but poised to run all the way to the Super Bowl. Of course, it had to be them. But hey, just think about Denver, how arrogant they were as a team of destiny. This might be the most pompous team in NFL history, destined to do what only one other team has done before, and go undefeated. Nah, fuck that! We're the Jags, and we're not gonna let that happen. The first quarter went with both teams matching scores, with the teams locked in a stalemate at the half. Garrard played his absolute mind out, but of course, if you want to beat the best, you have to play like you're the best. Naturally, the Pats would score on the first drive of the second half, and Garrard would keep the pressure up by marching right down the field in response. Yet he would stall out deep, and facing third down at the 21, he would find Dennis Northcutt at the goal line only for, oh my god, how do you drop that? The Jags would have to settle for a field goal, a decision that would cost them, as Brady would make quick work with the defense and make it a 2-score game. But come on, you can't give up now, not when you've got Garrard playing the best game of his career. Keep fighting! Like clockwork, he would come all the way down again, to the 7-yard line, and find Matt Jones in the corner of the end zone on third down, and oh, you've gotta be fucking kidding me, man! How do you drop that shit? Do you have cinder blocks for hands? A Scobie field goal would be answered with the Patriots one of their own, and now here you are, down by 11 with about 6.5 minutes left. Desperation o'clock. Little by little, Garrard would give it one more shot, crossing midfield with over 4 minutes left. Come on, you gotta move quicker than that. Score quickly and get a stop. You can do this! Maybe it was just destiny. They tried to bite off more than they could chew. I mean, this was the '07 Patriots after all. Nobody was beating them, especially on their home turf. But, man, they came so close. If those 2 passes weren't dropped, they would have come away with 14 points instead of 6. They would have only been down 3 instead of 11. And they could have just run the clock out on their last drive and find a way to score and win, instead of being forced to take desperate measures. Is this wishful thinking? Maybe. But man, they really did come so close! Only to pull a classic Jacksonville and shoot themselves in the foot. Again. But no one was left hurting more than Fred Taylor. His last chance at a Super Bowl run with the Jags gone like the wind. And for a man who loved this team more than anything, it just made it even worse. Here is a man who came fresh out of college with an attitude, suspended twice for misdemeanors, stealing from teammates and using a stolen credit card to buy pizza. He arrived in Jacksonville with 4 gold teeth and an agent named Tank, a man who was more of a father figure to him than anything else. And yet, he was taken advantage of, as William Tank Black would be arrested in 2002 for swindling NFL players, including $3 million from Taylor. In his eyes, it was the ultimate betrayal, a moment that would forever change him. Since then, he skipped the clubs, started working out more, and met with psychologists during the off-season. He's gotten married and had 4 kids to replace his 4 gold teeth. He makes millions a year and worries about the electric bill. He's become a leader, a legend for all the fans who grew up watching this plucky little team in Duval. He's more than a player. He's the soul of this team. Every Sunday before a game, he would wake up exactly 5 hours before kickoff and walk into the bathroom to take a shower. He'd set the temperature just right, let the water fall on his body, and turn off all the lights. I stand in the shower with my eyes closed and the water falling down on me, and I imagine this great white light, Taylor would say. Then I see our team on the field. I think about every play we're going to run, how each one is going to work. It's like I play the whole game right there in the dark, and it's always the perfect game. He takes the handoff and plows through for a first down. He flies down the backfield and snags a pass on the run. He hurdles a defender and dives into the end zone. Only after the game is won is he satisfied and finally ready to play. This is his vision, and this is his team, forever. But I suppose some things just aren't meant to be. The Jacksonville Jaguars would fall once again and wouldn't recover for a long, long time. He was left to watch as the team crumbled before his eyes. Injuries decimated their roster again left and right. His numbers would decline, putting up the worst season of his career, as Jones-Drew grew to take his place, one that left him full of pride, but also nostalgic for better times. Still the most rushing yards in franchise history, and it's not really close. 18th most all time, with multiple Hall of Famers ahead and behind him. And yet, he came away with nothing. No ring, no glory. Yet despite that, he was happy. But his time had passed, and there was nothing left to do but accept the future. Do you think that Fred Taylor deserves to be in the Hall of Fame?
Yes, 100%. Next question. I think he had a 98-yard run against the Dolphins in the 99 divisional game. Wow, that was an incredible run. And then he just kind of kept up that production for another 10 years. Even when the Jaguars were having a lot of lean years, he and Maurice Jones-Drew made a really good tandem pair together.
With that, the last remnant of those golden days in the 90s is gone. Headed to New England of all places. Sure, why not? Make it even worse, why don't you? I mean, they just went undefeated the year before, as if they needed more firepower. Wait, you're telling me they lost in the Super Bowl? To the Giants of all teams? Well, how did that happen? Oh, well, I guess if you can take solace in one thing, Jacksonville, it's that there's nowhere to go but up, right?